All right, picture this. It's the absolute dead of night in the isolated rural village of Mangalapara. That's deep in the Pakora district of Jharkhand. The air is thick, the silence is just heavy. And what starts as a totally normal, customary religious offering, it quickly devolves into an absolute nightmare. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack a genuinely chilling supernatural thriller that is, quite frankly, going to make your blood run cold. But before we start at the very beginning, I really want you to hear this threat. Just imagine waking up in the pitch dark to find your usually timid, quiet nephew glaring down at you. And he's speaking in this dead, cold voice that is absolutely not his own, just warning you, leave us alone or you'll be killed. It's terrifying, right? Well, to understand exactly how this family reached such a horrifying breaking point, we have to wind the clock back a bit. Chapter 1. The Midnight Sacrifice. So, it's December 26, 2024. 18-year-old Nirmal and his extended family are all gathered at his grandmother's house for the annual Pushkali Puja. They've literally just wrapped up a customary midnight goat sacrifice at the local Kalima temple. It's 1 a.m., they've got the meat packed away in a sack, and they face a pretty fateful choice. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the route they have to pick to get home. They have two options. There's the bamboo forest road, which is longer, about 2 kilometers, but it passes by houses and thick trees, feels somewhat safe. And then there's the mine road. It's only 1 kilometer long, but it is utterly desolate. We're talking flanked by rocky hills, zero light, completely isolated. But, they're exhausted. So they make the fatal decision to just take the shorter, darker mine road. Just a short way down that creepy, desolate path, Nirmal feels thirsty and stops at this lone hand pump. They set the heavy sack down in the dark and tell Nirmal's nephew Pawan to keep an eye on it. But Pawan gets totally spooked by the isolation and abandons the sack to join the others. When they finally go back to grab their cargo, one of the goat's legs is just brutally torn off, missing entirely. Fear instantly sets in. But trying not to panic, they silently pack it up, carry it home, hide it under a cover near the courtyard well, and go to sleep. Chapter 2. The Unholy Feast. Because whatever took that leg, it followed them home. And it kicked off this progressive escalation of supernatural horror that no one in the family was even remotely prepared for. Let's walk through this timeline. By 1 a.m., they've left the temple, right? Fast forward to 3:30 a.m., Nirmal wakes up to use the washroom. As he steps out into the dark courtyard, he catches a sight that completely freezes him. His sister, Anchal, is silently carrying that incredibly heavy goat carcass right out the front gate. Nirmal creeps after her and follows her to the doorstep of the neighboring Muslim family's house. And right there, he watches in sheer terror as his sister literally tears the raw meat in half with her bare hands and just begins aggressively eating it. Naturally, Nirmal absolutely panics. He sprints back to wake his grandmother, but when they rush out, the courtyard is totally empty. The goat, it's right back under its cover by the well. They rush to Anchal's room and find her seemingly fast asleep in her bed. But as Nirmal gets closer, he sees blood all over her hands. But it's blood that only he can see. His grandmother sees nothing. Suddenly, Anchal sits straight up. Her hair is a wild mess. She gives him this deeply eerie, unnatural smile, and this dead, hollow voice speaks from within her. Why are you telling everyone? You're only bothering me. Paralyzed by fear, Nirmal's body just freezes up completely, and he completely blacks out. He faints on the spot. Chapter 3. The Spreading Darkness. So Nirmal wakes up the next morning at like 9 a.m. He's got a burning fever, and he's just praying the worst is over. But honestly, the supernatural grip is only just beginning to tighten around this family. That evening, as they're sitting by the fire, they make a genuinely chilling discovery. Nirmal plugs in Anchal's phone, the screen lights up, and he sees her wallpaper. It's a photo of Farita, a 16-year-old girl from the neighboring house, which, by the way, is the exact same house Anchal was staring at the night before while eating the meat. The horrifying catch here, Farita died 5 days ago. And when Nirmal confronts Anchal about it, she turns to him and her eyes are completely blood red, just burning with this unnatural, terrifying rage. Later that night, the terror starts spreading. Nirmal wakes up just before midnight. He glances over to Pavan's bed, remember, his timid nephew, and Pavan isn't there. Nirmal steps out into the hall and finds him wide awake, standing completely stiff, staring menacingly out the window directly at the dead girl's house. Nirmal gently touches Pawan's shoulder just to ask what's wrong. Instantly, Pawan whips around. His eyes are burning red too, and he launches this sudden, hyper-violent attack. He mercilessly starts strangling Nirmal in the dark, and he snarls, "Don't interfere too much with us or I'll kill you." Literally gasping for his life, Nirmal flails around and purposely knocks over a nearby vase, shattering it on the floor. The noise wakes his cousin Krishna, and the second Krishna stirs, Pawan instantly releases his grip and just walks back to bed like absolutely nothing happened. But guys, this night is far from over. Moments later, these horrific screams start echoing through the halls. The whole family rushes into Anchal's room to find her writhing on the bed in absolute agony. She's screaming, "A lot of people are coming and hitting me. They'll take me with them." She's thrashing so violently that the only thing that finally stops her is their grandmother desperately splashing holy Ganges water all over her. Chapter 4. The Desperate Exorcism. At this point, the family realizes the terrifying reality of what they're actually dealing with. It's a dual possession. 2 family members, 2 distinct, incredibly violent entities. They need an exorcism, and fast. So they quietly hatch a plan to trick Anchal and Pawan into visiting the local temple priest. But before they can spring this trap, things take a very dark turn. The next evening, around 8:30 p.m., Nirmal and Krishna are walking home alone from a local football match. Pawan had gotten angry and left the match early by himself. Now, Nirmal and Krishna are dreading the walk home because they have to go down that dark, desolate mine road, the exact place where this entire nightmare kicked off. They're walking in the pitch black, approaching that same isolated hand pump. And the heavy silence of the road is suddenly broken by this wet, horrible crunching sound. I want you to really pause for a second and brace yourself here. What do you think was waiting for them at that pump? It was Pawan. He was sitting there in the dark, violently chewing on a raw goat bone. When he finally turns to look at them, his eyes were completely white, like zero pupils, and his face was just completely smeared in fresh blood. Nirmal, totally in shock, tries to speak to him, but Pawan instantly charges. He grabs a heavy stone from the ground and violently splits Nirmal's head right open, leaving him bleeding out on the desolate road. Nirmal survives, but the family knows they are out of time. They have to force the issue now. The next evening, they borrow a car to trick the possessed pair. And the journey inside that car is just frantic, claustrophobic panic. Midway through, Pawan realizes they're heading to the temple. He lunges from the back seat, viciously choking Nirmal again, screaming at them to stop the car. Krishna barely manages to steer them into the temple grounds, where waiting disciples literally have to physically drag a thrashing Anshal and Pawan into the priest's binding circle. And this brilliantly illustrates just how chaotic this exorcism gets. The absolute second the priest begins his loud, aggressive chanting, Anshal throws herself onto the hard ground. She starts convulsing wildly, screaming at the top of her lungs, sprinting around the edge of the temple courtyard like a trapped wild animal fighting for its life. But then you look at Pawan. In stark, terrifying contrast to Anshal's agonizing thrashing, Pawan just stood there, perfectly still. Locked within that binding circle, his frozen, unresponsive stillness was honestly somehow way more unnatural and menacing than all the screaming going on around him. Finally, the sheer weight of the priest's mantras breaks the spirit inside Anshal. The priest forcefully demands her identity. And the voice coming from Anshal replies, "I am Farita, the 16-year-old neighbor who had just passed away." Now, at first she tries to claim this totally harmless motive, saying she only possessed Anshal to retrieve a dropped bracelet near the house. But the priest? He's not buying it for a second. He intensifies the chanting, demanding the absolute, unvarnished truth. Chapter 5, The Tragic Revelation. Okay, let's dive into this because the horrific, bloody truth behind this haunting is finally spoken aloud in the temple, and it is incredibly tragic. Farita confessed that she had secretly been in love with Nirmal, but had to keep it totally hidden because they were from different religions. But here's where it gets really dark. Farita's cousin wanted to force her into a marriage with him. When she flat out refused, he threatened her life. A few days later, under the guise of visiting an aunt, that same cousin intercepted Farita on an isolated road and strangled her to death. But Farita's spirit didn't just move on. Filled with rage, her vengeful spirit immediately took the life of the cousin who murdered her. And suddenly, the chilling, obsessive logic of this dual possession makes perfect sense. Farita possessed Anshal simply to be near Nirmal, the boy she loved but could never be with in life. But her murderer, her cousin, was also now a wandering spirit. Seeing Farita possess someone in Nirmal's house, the murderous cousin possessed Pawan. Why? So he could continue his terrifying stalking and exert control over Farita, even in death. Once he realized this insanely dark, inescapable cycle, the priest successfully bound both of the spirits, forcing them out of Anshal and Pawan using blessed water. The spirits were banished and never bothered the family again. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to chew on. When a cycle of violence, control, and obsession extends completely beyond the grave, invading the bodies of totally innocent people, what level of madness can love truly take? Thank you so much for joining me on this dark journey today.